Dungeon delving, monster hunting, treasure hoarding, and storytelling. These are all the key components and main factors of the popular tabletop role-playing game Dungeons & Dragons, also known as D&D. D&D initially released 45 years ago with the first edition of Dungeons & Dragons, faced a very heavy slew of challenges in its early days, ranging from having to compete against popular pre-existing board games, having to fight for the stage against screens that were upcoming, such as movies and the uprising video games, as well as certain cultic accusations that weren't really a worry amongst other games, but very much so in D&D's early history. Despite the claims and the challenges that it had faced, the fans who loved the game thought it was one of the most fun things to have as a pastime. They believed that it was fun, social, a time to get together with your friends and family and not have a screen involved or in the way. They thought it was all ups, little downs. This, however, didn't stop some people from criticizing the game heavily. In 1979 is when the majority of D&D's problems started, with the suicide of a young boy, where the private eye investigator who was looking into the incident, into the death, made a connection between the death and the game. An unwarranted connection that many people disagreed with, but went through nonetheless. And in 1982, a young boy again committed suicide, and this time the mother of the boy, Patricia Pulling, had made the connection between her son's death and the popular tabletop role-playing game, claiming, according to BBC's The Great 1980s D&D Panic, she said that her son was seen summoning a demon in his bedroom before he killed himself, and she claimed that the game was a fantasy RPG that uses demonology, witchcraft, murder, blasphemy, assassination, satanic-type rituals, gambling, barbarism, demon summoning, and necromancies, as well as a long list of other teachings that were very taboo. Using this as her ground, she founded something called BAD, Father Against Dungeons & Dragons, and spearheaded the effort to rid the world of this cursed game. In doing so, she gathered enough support on her side that even with the immense amounts of counterclaims and arguments against BAD's stance, D&D began to see falters and failings in its own production, in its own success, and a steady decline was seen. The game never truly died, but it did go under the radar for a number of years, a number of decades. It did release, however, new content every now and then, and even new additions to the game with new rule sets, starting with the first edition and going off into Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons, 3.5 edition, and 4th edition. All different, the same game, but different mechanics that the fans loved some over the others, and longtime fans had a history with all editions and have experience with all of them and have favorites, and has given variety to the game, although during those times it was nothing more than something that your coworker's son played on the weekends once in a blue moon. It wasn't that popular. Then it got mentioned in pop culture, starting with one of the most well-known examples, The Big Bang Theory. Mentioned it on air for the first time in early October of 2009 in Season 3, all according to the archives of The Big Bang Theory's episode counts and mentions of Dungeons & Dragons. And then the cast actually played Dungeons & Dragons, the game, on camera for the first time in early to mid-October 2011. This began to steamroll and get the ball rolling of the game's popularity, and while it didn't skyrocket immediately, it raised awareness of the actual game. And slowly more and more pop culture references began sprouting up here and there, and the game's name became known more and more to the new generation that had grown up without it. Then, August 19th, 2014, 5th edition was released, the newest rendition of the game. With it came a new set of rules that allowed for ease of access, accessibility. It allowed for those who had never been in the game or in the hobby before, who wanted in, the easiest path into the hobby that could have been offered. People who had no idea that they would be playing found themselves enthralled with it, with the game. It was open, accepting, welcoming to anyone who wanted to play, according to CBRs. According to CBRs, how D&D quietly took over pop culture. It was a massive hit amongst the fans, and with that, and more pop culture references, such as the popular Stranger Things Netflix series, the ball really started to get rolling, and momentum was starting to build, and popularity was starting to go through the roof. And then streaming became involved. Streaming, Twitch, YouTube, all these different platforms where people would have podcasts and shows, weekly events, where a group of people would get together, sit around the table, and play Dungeons & Dragons, record themselves, and share it with the internet. This sparked certain phenomena. Shows like Critical Role, The Adventure Zone, Acquisitions Incorporated, and other many very popular ones, began to spearhead in the phenomenon that D&D has become today. The amount of creative output of the community of Dungeons & Dragons, as well as the sheer volume of the game itself. 5th edition currently having over 25 books, hardcover books to its collection. And with according to CNBC's article, D&D is more popular now than it ever has been thanks to Twitch. Critical Role, the show I had mentioned earlier, spearheaded the effort to get Dungeons & Dragons its own animated TV series by animating its own podcast. A feat that would never have been guessed to happen a mere decade ago. With all this in play, it's no wonder how vastly popular Dungeons & Dragons has become in the modern day and age. And it truly is, when you think about it, a testament to no matter what has happened, no matter what looks like is about to happen, no matter what you believe will happen, you can never quite be sure of where the story will go or how it will turn out. Everything can be a surprise.